Welcome to another new episode of What's Brewing with CIM. Today's business world is dynamic, it's fast paced, and there are so many brands out there. But the businesses that do well are the ones who truly understands its customers, its market, the competition, and has observed fundamental truths of growth in its operations. So today we are going to talk to a veteran business leader, someone with extensive experience, close to over 3 decades, to educate us about these fundamental truths that help drive brands forward. Welcome to the show, Bertram Paul, the Managing Director of and Chief Executive Officer of Chevron Lubricants.
Thank you, Venuri. Thank you for having me.
Of course, you have spent over 30 years in your career across sales, marketing, in different leadership positions across different markets. So, what do you think it is that really makes brands stay relevant and build trust among its customers?
Okay, when you started off your introduction, you were talking about the history and the evolution, which actually, to answer your question, I think, in the old days, they used to actually say that a successful salesperson is someone who can sell a refrigerator to an Eskimo. Now, that is no longer relevant with the marketing orientation. The reason is, if the example were true, the salesman can never go back to the customer, obviously. So the key thing is in marketing and for successful brands and for successful businesses, it needs to be sustainable. You need to have sustainable profits. You need to have sustainable growth. And to do that, in marketing, something that we talk a lot about is the importance of repeat purchase, i.e. the customer needs to keep coming back to you, right? Only then you have a sustainable business. So to do that, to get back to your question in terms of, how does a brand stay relevant and trusted? For a customer to keep coming back, there has to be consistency in terms of the delivery from the company or the brand, right? There should be, the promise that the brand is offering needs to be consistent over time. Otherwise, customers will really stop coming in. So that I would say is one. Another one is especially in this day and age where there is so much of AI generated content that is flooding channels. There's really a need for brands to really convey, to come across in a personal and emotional manner rather than just functional. So that I think is really key, and we really see that consumers are kind of going back to that, looking for those elements, being personal, being kind of having emotional connect because of so much of AI generated content out there. The other one I would say is that for a business you need to really be genuine about the values that you stand for, because often you find some brands tend to adopt various causes, right, which are really not, I would say it's not part of their DNA.
It's not authentic to them.
It's not authentic, exactly. So consumers see through those, right? So simple example, if you position yourself as an ethical and ethical player, where you value integrity and so on, and then it comes out that you're running some sweatshops in some far off country, the whole thing breaks down, right? So that's I think is really important. And I would also think that things do go wrong. I mean, as they say, best laid plans of mice and men, things do fall apart. When that happens, how do you actually handle it, right? Are you transparent for the market and for consumers, or do you try to cover it up? Because if a brand has been consistent over time and consumers see that, look, they are very sincere about the way they're approaching it, they'll even give you another chance. They will choose to overlook certain mistakes probably that have happened. So I think these elements are really crucial. And then the other one is, since you spoke about how do you remain relevant and trusted over time, I think it's really important that your core values that you're conveying, those need to remain firm, while you can change the execution probably, how you're communicating those. You look at the top brands like Coca-Cola or Nike, that's exactly how they operate it. The core essence of it remains the same, but execution can change.
It's dynamic. May change.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, since we're talking about platforms, and also you mentioned a little bit about AI earlier, I think when it comes to marketing, especially the sector or the marketing space, tend to look at prioritizing campaigns or digital activation or going with the trend. But is that really it? Now, what about the on ground execution, the distribution, the dealership network, which we may perceive as a bit more traditional aspects of the business? Is it still important? Does it need to evolve? What's your take?
A great question. I mean, in marketing theory, we talk about the marketing mix, right? The four P's, and then we talk about the seven P's. The aspect of what you're talking about, the advertising campaigns, whether it's digital or mainstream media, whatever, this is only one element of the marketing mix, the promotion, the P which talks about promotion, right? All the other elements are as important or equally important, right? And they have to work together. You cannot really ride on one. The reason that I think what's really behind your question is the fact that advertising is what is most visible. So
It has taken the limelight.
yes, it's taken the limelight. So people try to, they connect with that, but there's a lot of groundwork that has to happen. And if you look at successful brands, they put a lot into, distribution. Your product's got to be, absolute. If it's not delivering on the promise, people stop buying, right? Price, you don't have to be the lowest price, but, you need to convey value, right? That's got to be there. And distribution, the place element of the marketing mix, that's vital. You look at, again, top brands. Let's look at Sri Lankan brands, whether it is Sunlight from Unilever or Panadol from GSK. Really, their success is based on the strength of the distribution. I mean, if I recall right, total Sri Lankan outlet base is about 280,000 or so, right? These brands actually cover 60 to 70% of that. That's the kind of penetration they have. So that's a success. And you take even a brand like Dialog for that matter. When
The
customers,
presence.
yeah, absolutely. The retail distribution is really the backbone. While they also have great communication campaigns and so on, so they all have to work together. I mean, same goes for Coca-Cola internationally, right? Whenever the idea is when you get out, you should be able to. It should be available. You should be able to get that. So there are lots of things which you need to line up. Which is your distribution network, your relationship with your dealers, your distributors, coverage, your frequency. All these have to be considered. So they work together. You cannot emphasize on one at the expense of others.
Because it has more flair, but does not mean that it's the only thing.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're leading a top or a very large scale lubricant company, but that being your core product is also very functional. So that must be very challenging in terms of fostering brand preference and loyalty going beyond the price point. So how does that look like?
Yeah, great question. The way we look at it is that, trying to sell on price alone is not sustainable. Companies that try to do that really struggle. And, cost leadership used to be one of the strategies, the generic strategies they talk about. But even when it was proposed, it was very clear that it's not something you can hold on to. There could always be, another player, from another country. Sometimes, you have this where they actually could manufacture cheaper than you. I mean, take the car industry. Japan came up with the low cost manufacture. Then you had Korea coming behind them. I mean, today you got China.
Yeah.
It's got really great quality at a low price. So selling on price is really a challenge. Rather, what is more important is, selling on the value proposition, right? So in the lubricant industry, lubricants are really used in automotive application for automotive engines and also industrial machinery. So essentially, the way we look at it, and in our industry, customer preference and loyalty is really built on, again, consistency, which I referred to in your first question, and you need to consistently deliver performance. The oil needs to really ensure that your engine keeps running, right? And also in areas such as improved energy efficiency. That is something that there's a lot of emphasis that's kind of gone into in recent times. And for especially with machinery, we talk about asset longevity. It needs to go over the long term, and all of these result in lowering the total cost of ownership. So it's not just price, right? So it is about, we talk of extended drain intervals, how it can, improve your fuel efficiency, how it can probably reduce your maintenance cost. So overall, if you are able to lower your cost of ownership, then that is the basis on which we actually differentiate.
Okay, but that also gets me thinking now. Sometimes economic conditions can be quite challenging. We'll take the example of Sri Lanka itself. We have had our times when it comes to economic crisis and etc. So the how do you continue to balance the aspect of value, of quality, of the ultimate product proposition that you give, which is hinged on the cost inflation? How do you balance that?
Yeah, so as Sri Lankans, we've gone through our share of tough times, right? From 2019 and then COVID, and we had the economic crisis, and now we have the Middle East conflict that's affecting us. So one thing that, in my experience, that I find is that when things get tough, when in economic challenging times, interestingly, what we find is consumers avoid experimenting, because when things are all going fine, they think, why don't I try that brand? Let me check it
That's
out.
an interesting thing.
Right.
They don't experiment.
Yeah, the reason is the cost of failure is very high. So in that, because they can't afford to, lose money, right? So therefore, we find that during tough times, they tend to stick with known brands, because brands which have a proven track record, because they feel safe with it. So that is something that actually works in favor of brands. What we do find in challenging times is consumers do tend to what we call downtrade, right? But if they can do that within the same brand, then that would tend to be their main option, right? So they would go for, say, more cost effective, what we call stock keeping units, SKUs, right? Or even kind of product combinations, right? Good example is in 2008, when the US went through the economic downturn. One company that really stood out and went against what was happening was McDonald's. The reason is they came up with I think they called it the $1 meal, right? And they actually offered something which was affordable. And of course, there was a lot of work that had to go behind it, because we actually say that we call it value engineering, trying to see how you can actually not really reduce price by squeezing your margins. That's not the idea. But how can you really look at the entire mix and see where you can really save costs and pass that benefit on to consumers? So if you look at the example I gave you of McDonald's, in 2008, when they adopted this $1 meal, they grew revenue, they grew profit, they grew market share in a declining market. Right? So that is a great example. And I mean, in fact, right now, 18 years later, they are actually following the same playbook. Of course, with inflation, things have changed. Now they are calling it, I think, the budget combo under $5, right? But within $5, they're offering a combination of
big
meals,
proposition.
a proposition, right? And so again, that's what really the smart brands do. So again, I think I refer to it even in the industry I come from. We focus a lot on offering extended drain intervals. So if you're servicing your vehicle in 5,000 kilometers, now we would give you an oil that can actually run for 10,000. Diesel engines, we actually go up to 30,000 kilometers on a single oil drain. So all that really results in a benefit to the consumer. So that's really how you work with the elements, rather than just trying to cut price. Yeah, and that's how you tide through the tough times.
I see. Okay. So now, if we talk a little bit about your leadership exposure, and because you've been doing this for so long and you probably see it all, let's say that you are now going to hire a young professional or a marketing professional. What would be those little nuances that you look at, which makes you think, oh, this person has got it, they're going to deliver on the job?
So one of the things we look for when we interview candidates is not just for that position, but do they have potential for advancement, right? Because we are looking to see, okay, the guy is coming in now, but say in 3 years, 5 years, is he able to get into his supervisor's role? So to identify that kind of potential, we really look for to see, do they understand strategic issues, not just the tactical day-to-day stuff, which may be required for the job,
For the current role.
for the current role, but We look at the future. So I can tell you, when I'm at interviews, the questions that I ask candidates is really to ascertain, does this guy or this girl understand the business that they are in? Because they need to know, how well do they know their business, and how well do they understand strategy? Because again, when I say strategy, we check on, all the sales guys are involved, sales or marketing people are involved in various tactical things which they execute. So we try to see, do they understand the link between what they are doing on a day-to-day basis and the strategy of the company?
How it contributes to the
How it
larger
contributes.
picture.
So are they able to establish that link, right? Because if we find that, simple thing like when you talk of strategy, right? A strategy, if you look at the theoretical principle, it's basically about trying to come up with a way of exploiting an opportunity. It could be a macro environment or a micro environmental opportunity, and ideally that's got to link with a company's strength. Or else the opposite is you're trying to overcome some kind of a threat which may be exacerbated by a weakness the company has. So that's what a strategy is about. So when we question the candidates, we really try to see, do they understand what the core issues are that their company is dealing with, and how their actions are actually contributing to address that or to solve that. Because if they understand those issues, that means that when they come over to our business, the chances are that they would do well. If you find that the link is weak, the guy doesn't know, why he's doing what he's doing, then there's an issue.
Okay, so that's what even professionals will need to hone in themselves in terms
Yes.
of be more recruitable or doing well
Correct.
in their jobs. Okay.
Yeah.
So also from a leadership perspective, now there are different teams. You come across a great amount of teams when you work in a company, but you can really separate and identify between struggling teams and teams that are doing well, high performing teams. What is the difference between them? Why is one struggling, one doing really well?
Yeah, so I think there are a few factors there. What I would put down as number one is really cohesiveness or unity of the team, right? Again, if you go to management theory, they talk about the stages of group development or team development. There was a guy called Tuckman who came up with this. Probably heard of it: forming, storming, norming, performing. Right. The key thing there is what he says is you can't get down to performing until you resolve the area of
Storm
norming.
and the norm.
Yes. So norming is about resolving conflicts, establishing trust, building that unity that is needed for you to perform. So for most teams, when we see why they don't perform, there is really an issue with conflicts in the team. They don't have that teamwork, as we call it. Case in point really Sri Lanka cricket comes to mind, right? We will not go any further, but
True.
I mean that
Understand.
it really that's really critical, and we see that in strong teams, right? The other one is, I would say, why some teams don't perform is really not understanding the strategy, because strategy, if it is just sitting in a document, that's not good enough, right? People need to understand it. They need to understand what is the company's goal. How am I contribute? What is the strategy? How am I contributing to that? They need to really know that, right? When it is not translated down to the people who are doing it, then you have issues. The other one I would say is really, I in your introduction you referred to this thing about the importance of fundamentals, and I can't agree more, right? Simple things like monitoring activities, effective, timely execution, right? I think it was Drucker who said people do what others review, right? So that's really fundamental to it. So if that is not properly done, then you find things don't really work as it should. The last one I would say, and this may come across as a cliche, but I really think it is not, and that is people need to have a passion to win, right? That
And all of
desire.
them need to have it.
Yes, and they call it the fire in the belly, really, right? And it is not, like I said, it's not a cliche, because I've seen it with the teams I've worked in. Guys who have that, people who have that, they really stand out. I mean, simple thing like it's very important for sales people. You give a commitment to your supervisor to say, okay, this is my target, this is how much I'm going to do. You got to come through, no matter as they say, hell or high water, right? You got to do it. If you can't get it from customer A, you got to probably get customer B to subsidize. How you do it is up to you, but you got to deliver. If you given a commitment to your, and this works across, right, whether it is sales or at senior management level, right? If you given a commitment to boss to say, yes, I'm going to do this, then you better make it happen, right? Now, some people have that fire within to say, I'm an achiever, I'm a winner, I'm not a loser,
I will get this done.
I will get it done. Somehow I will get it done. People who have that passion really excel. Others who are, deflated, think, it's okay, you can get by. I tried. I mean, honestly, personally, I believe this is something that I'm very much against, even with kids. They talk about participatory trophies. I think you're really giving the wrong message, right? Because you need to try, right? I mean, you may not be able to achieve, but at least you try. And that is why we talk very much about, trying to have stretch goals and aspirational goals, so that if you are reaching for something higher, even if you probably fall a little bit short against that, you're still probably getting closer to your goal, right? And I firmly believe in this. They say you don't win silver, you lose gold, right? So that passion to win, that fire in the belly is really important. So I think the strong teams, the people have that.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have been discussing, or you've been discussing a lot about strategy as well, and the other side of the coin of strategy is the execution. But sometimes we see that there is a great divide between the two. There's a gap. Where do you think organizations go wrong in terms of bringing the strategy to execution?
So one area really is, and I've seen this quite a bit, not just with, I'm not talking about my own company, but in my career. One of the issues is, I think we call it the not invented here syndrome, meaning we didn't come up with it. It's something that's been imposed from outside. So, and this is one of the issues you have when you bring consultancy. You bring a consulting firm in, they come up with this and they push it down. And the people say, this is not
There's
ours.
no ownership.
There's no ownership, absolutely. So there has to be buying. I mean, it's fine to get consultants, and the good consultants actually do it in a way that they sell their ideas. They get the people involved, they have these kind of brainstorming sessions, so people contribute their ideas, then they kind of bring in their own. So at least they package it in a way that, well, we were part of the process. So then there's buying, right? But if there isn't, if something is imposed, and then you say, why you do it? You have no, as they say, you have no skin in the game in terms of for this to succeed.
You're passive towards it.
You're passive. So that's I would say one reason. The other one, which I think I referred to in one of your other questions, is if a strategy, if it is just in a document, it's not going to work. It needs to get translated down, right? People need to understand it, and I mean this is same again even with marketing communication. You can have a concept, and sometimes you find agencies coming up with very creative things, but if your consumer doesn't understand it, you're starting off on the wrong foot, right? So it's very important that strategy is understood. And then the other one, as I said, is fundamentals of monitoring and control. You have to make sure that you track progress, you take corrective action. This may seem very boring things to do, but if you don't do those, then again there is a gap between strategy and execution. And then of course you need to constantly review the strategy you come up with to see whether is it in sync with the environment, because things are changing so much. They talk of the VUCA environment, right? Volatile, whatever, uncertain, ambiguous, all of that. So the thing is, you need to constantly review your strategy. And I can tell you something that we are finding is that when I talk to most business leaders, in the old days they used to talk about long-term plans. So they talk about 5-year plan, 10-year plans. Today most business leaders are saying those are out of the window, because you can't plan for 3 months.
Exactly,
right? I mean,
yes.
You look at where we were middle of February, the global situation, right? Whereas where we are, now or in March, right?
Let alone 3 months, even a month seems a long
time. Exactly. And I mean, there are leaders in, say, in the apparel sector, tea sector, whom I deal with, and this is something they're saying, it's so really volatile. So you really need to be reviewing your strategies and constantly keep changing them to keep in pace with environmental changes.
Okay. So this brings us to our final question for the day also, and I think this will be a very interesting one. Let's imagine that you are going to develop a marketing training program, a training and development program. What would be the key things, one, two, or three, that you would absolutely ensure to include, which is also often overlooked in the current context? What would those be?
Okay, so I've been involved in marketing education for many years, several decades, I would say, over and above my day job, right? And something that I see, especially with Sri Lankan, young people, is that they are not very strong in their. I'm talking about sales and marketing people, right? They're not very strong in their numbers, right? And they almost have a phobia, a fear of numbers, right? And I mean, I've asked this question from some people, and they've given me some very interesting responses where they've said, if I was good in numbers, I would have done finance, I would have done accounting.
You won't be here.
I won't be here, exactly. But that's a huge issue, because if they are not what we call financially literate, right? I mean, you don't need to go and you don't need to do your P&L and balance sheet properly. Your finance people will do that for you. But you need to be able to understand it. You need to be able to interpret it. You need to know what is driving the cost, right? Brand managers, for example, need to know the P&L of their brand, right? Same way, if you're doing some marketing initiatives, campaigns, whatever, you need to know the ROI behind it. How does that work, right? And one of the areas that I really find people struggling with is sometimes they want to do things without understanding the impact on the bottom line, right? Now that's very dangerous, because what it actually means is you're not going to progress very far, right? Especially for senior management roles. If you look at, I mean, this was one of the things many years ago. Interestingly, I was part of the CIM committee many years ago, and I actually headed the what was it called, the Corporate Integration Task Force, I think, which was basically about, and my mandate was to take marketing into boardrooms,
Right.
because we felt that not enough marketing people are making it to board level, right? And one of the reasons for that is that unfortunately lots of sales and marketing people don't understand numbers.
The literacy, the number literacy.
The number literacy is an issue, and the problem with that is your shareholders are not going to entrust the company or to drive to give a person a responsibility who's someone who doesn't understand numbers, and therefore they feel may not be a good steward of their funds, shareholder funds, right? So you need to be able to talk numbers, and this is something. So you have to answer your question in terms of you training people, what needs to really be in there. Financial literacy is absolutely vital, right? Because often I hear, even marketing people, advertising people complain about, oh, my budgets have been cut. Moment there is a, economic issue, first thing to go is the marketing budget. Well, I don't really agree with that, because the reason is it's up to you as a marketing person to make the case. If you can show the owners of the company, look, I need so much of money, here is what I will deliver with it. I mean, if you are able to show a return, and of course you need to prove yourself that you can actually bring that return, why on earth wouldn't they invest behind it, right? So when they invest in a plant or a machinery, they know that, okay, from this I'm going to produce so much of units, and it's going to bring me so much of revenue. As marketing people, we need to be able to do the same thing. We need to show that by investing so much, here is the return I can get you. So that numeracy, the kind of what we call business case driven thinking. What are the costs? What are the benefits? If your benefits are not higher than the cost, why do it? You're wasting money, right? So I think that's a very important area which needs to come into for sales and marketing training. One of the areas, especially for marketing, I would say, is often we find that if you take brand managers, they are responsible for the success of the brand. And brand success ultimately means, I mean, you can have various other metrics, but it comes down to sales. How many units of that are you selling, right? And how much profit are you making? So delivering on some of those KPIs is really left to several other departments, right? I mean, sales are the guys who go and sell this. Yeah, yes. Right? I mean, you need to, if you're trying to run a consumer promotion, you're trying to say do some banded pack or whatever. You're upsetting your whole production flow. So you need to get the buy-in of your production, manager and those supervisors and all those guys to do this. So you have a lot of coordination, persuasion that you need to engage in, where they don't report to you. if they report to you, you can say do this, and then they have no choice but to do it. But that skill of influencing, persuading, which is really a lot of soft skills, is really vital. And I've seen people who are quite creative sometimes, who may be good in their marketing theory, they fail because their relationships are so bad, right? Guys who do well, they have great, what we used to call PR skills. They are able to get the support of, across the board, whether it is senior management or, frontliners. And then they work together as a team.
They have invested in the relationships also.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say those two areas would really stand out to me: financial literacy and relational skills, where you can get support even though you are not directly overlooking them or supervising them.
All right, so that's a formula for your success. For anybody's success, if you had to go through a training program designed by Bertram Paul. So lovely conversation. I think was really insightful in terms of true insights a young professional could use in their own career in ensuring that they progress well. And I think the key takeaway is to have that fire in your belly to really want to win. And when you want it, it will ultimately manifest in your career or whatever that you are engaged in. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed your presence, and we are inviting everyone to stay tuned for more episodes where we invite more experts to give equally important, insightful discussions and insights to you today.